Welcome to the DMF. I am your host, Justin Yachts, and today, unfortunately, we have no interview today. I tried really hard, but sometimes things fall through. I have interviews coming up, but no interviews for today. So I thought we would take a little bit of a detour today and look back on how the show has progressed. Now, I started this new format on February 11th, 2022. The last show was in September of 2021, and I started a new podcast called Kings Road Podcast, and that went through many ups and downs, but I was able to bring it back, and I wanted to change things up. I didn't want to continue doing the same things. I felt you were getting bored, the listener, from the old format, and I was getting bored. It was just me talking about movies and talking about politics and trying to find some kind of through line with that. So I just cut that all out and I decided this is going to be a show about interviews. And that is where the learning is going to come out. So that was the big change. Was I wanted this to be an interview show. So I went out and I found people to interview. And at first it was a little daunting because I hadn't done that before. I've done interviews, but I hadn't done that format of doing it. So I had to come up with a whole kind of way of doing the questions because some of the people I was interviewing, there wasn't a lot of research to do on them. So I had to format questions in a way that would allow me to get follow-up questions. And I've interviewed now people in India, people in Germany, people in the Netherlands, England, all over the world. And it's been such a welcome change. It's been different to do the time changes, but when I look at all these people I've interviewed, it's been such a rewarding task. Now, the first batch of these interviews has mainly been people with book Instagrams, book blogs. Just recently, I did an interview with Michael McKeever, and that is kind of a change of pace of where I want to go with the show. Because at first, I thought the show was just going to be about reading and books. And as I went through more and more, I started to find out that that's not really what the show is. The show is about productivity. It's about what did you learn? How did you learn? How do you learn? So, yes, books are involved, but it became so much more than that. So, also, I like the idea of playing off another person. There's something so much more that for me, this is hard right now. But as I said, finding the questions, that was the big thing. And then finding the through line and listening back and realizing that the show really was what the show really is productivity. How do you learn? Understanding how you learn. And through that, I found out that we shared a lot of the same interests. I don't know how many times I interviewed people. The book that changed them was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I've done full segments on that because it's just such an important book. And it seems like we all have the same reaction to it when we read this book. And that is that it's eye-opening. It's an eye-opening book that few literary books do. I haven't seen that. And it fascinates me because we all come to the same conclusion that this book really is the household book. This is the book that puts everybody else to shame, especially when it comes to financial literacy, because it talks about the liabilities and the assets. And it talks about these things in a way that most books aren't doing. It's not using heightened language, and it's trying to really just do two things. And I think that's one of the successes. So it's really interesting to see that we share a lot of the same books. Atomic Habits. A lot of people love that book. And it's, you know, it's just been interesting to see all the people and to see how we have this same love of books and learning. And like going back to Atomic Readers, it was fascinating to hear that, Facebook actually, cares about their employees. So many bad things are written about Facebook as just this evil, maniacal company. And here's somebody saying that this company actually, kind of gave him therapy in some ways and introduced him to new books. Now, he had always been a reader. On Abdi, uh, very fortunate to get him. The Book Thinkers, Collins, Reader's Cap. So many people I got to talk to. Some were scared to come on. And I said, no, listen, this can be very easy. We're just talking about things that you care about. And a lot of it had centered around books. But I felt that it was more than that. It's more about how do you learn? That's why I always ask everybody, what is your wake up routine? What is your nighttime routine? Do you meditate? What films do you like? These things. And I felt as I've gone through it, it's made me have to do more research and find out more about people, and I always like that. So productivity, how people learn, how people are productive, that those are the things that, really, changed with this, because I just set out, I was just going to do books and people that, had something to do with reading. And then I was like, no, this can be much more. Talking about productivity, everybody can understand that. So it opens the gamut to singers, musicians. Well, they're kind of the same thing. CEOs, actors, producers, authors. It doesn't just have to be about books. So I feel like doing this journey has opened me up to that. And I'm thankful that I was able to recognize that. Some of the things I learned, this is kind of a interesting thing. So I'm going to talk about some specific things. We're going to get a little specific on some of the things. One of the things that, and I got to credit on Abdi for this, is I used to say that books, give us empathy. He said perspective. Perspective. And I thought about that. And I said, he's right. It doesn't necessarily have to teach us empathy. It could just be giving us a different perspective on the way things are. Perhaps that is what books are doing. Perhaps that's what learning is doing. It's not just empathy, it's perspective. If you can see things from a different perspective, perhaps you'll have empathy for that, but you'll see things from a different side. So perspective, I always go back to that. That was something that was a big takeaway for me, was how he said that perspective. That was another thing that really that I loved. Amrat Deshmukh. I love what he said. Read random. And I always think about that. When things are going bad, what can you do? Read random. And I always go back to the story that he talked about, where he told the story about wanting to kill himself. but the lights were out. So he grabbed a book, and it was the Bhagavad Gita. You know, it was a book that I'm not pronouncing it right. This is like my third time taping this, so I don't want to tape this again. um, but yeah, he picked up that book, and it told the parable, and it explained to him what Bhagavad Bhagavad Gita. Is that how you pronounce it? I don't even know how to pronounce it, but it's a fascinating book. One of the best books you'll find on stories that you can apply to your life. You don't have to just look at it as religion. You can look at it as the stories. And as he said, read random. That saved his life. I mean, that was so brave of him to tell me that story. That it doesn't. Also, learning from him. Also, reading 1,000 words per minute. The fact that we shouldn't be just looking at it as words. We should be looking at it as pictures. Because when we do fiction, we see pictures. But when nonfiction, we kind of don't see pictures. So that was something I learned, was how to see pictures when I read. And I never thought about that. And then he explained how he reads 1,000 words per minute. He can read a book a day. That's a huge accomplishment. I'm just in awe that somebody can do that. And also he said, if you don't like the book, don't read it. It's not about, decorating a book or the highlights. So many, I can't go through everybody, but I just want to give some of the things that really stood out. Just, I'm humbled that people will share these stories with me, and I can put them out to you and present them to you in the best way possible. I feel fortunate that people are willing to, to trust me for this. So those are like three things. As I said, another thing that was a big takeaway was that we're all so similar, no matter where we are. India, Netherlands, England, Germany, America. We're all the same in some ways. We all shared the same love of these books and these different ideas that came from these books. Rich Dad Poor Dad seemed to be like one. It was kind of a through line for all of them. But another thing that I got from it was I became a better listener. I became a better listener listening to these people, because I'm going to explain to you a little bit about how this works. I'm not only listening to them, but I'm also formatting new questions, because from the answers I get from my original questions, I'm formatting new questions. So follow-up questions. So I'm doing that. I'm watching the time so that we don't go too over. I'm looking things up. I'm making sure all these things are fine. And I'm also seeing the interview, isn't it? The way I look at this interview is it's kind of like a screenplay, or the way a director would look at it. I'm seeing it all the way through. And I'm trying to, think about it. How is this going? And I'm seeing it all, on these different levels. And I'm like, is this story going to flow together? Because I'm trying to tell you a story. I want you to get a feel for the interview, a feel for the person. So there's a time, it's also a time, when to listen, when to interject. That's something that's a very delicate process. And that's something that I feel like I've gotten better as I've gone, because I just jumped in. I could have prepared, well, I don't think you can prepare for this, because it's a form of improv. As an actor, improv is part of it, but this is a form of improv that you can't really be taught. Even though I know the questions, I don't know the answers. I don't know how I'm going to say it. There's no way to actually, really rehearse it. Otherwise, it would sound, it would sound sincere. I don't see a way to do it unless I talked with them and then we're like, but then we'd be performing a play. So I feel like this has made me a better actor as well. But just learning, and something that happened, I jumped in and I've only wanted to make it better. It's not like I stopped there and I said, oh, this is as good as it gets. No, I wanted to make it better. And I just want to keep making it better. I think of it as like Duolingo. Shout out to them. They don't sponsor it, but I do Duolingo every day. I've that like 700 days in a row. The more, you just keep going. And I did, so I thought this was a good day to reflect on how far it's come. This is going to be a shorter show than others because I don't want you to sit here and ramble. Once I've had what I need to say, it's done. Now I'm stretching things out a little bit because I want certain things to land. But I mean, it's changed a lot. I mean, at first I was using just headphones that were wired. Through this, I've gotten headphones that I can move around a bit. I've tried to update the equipment, continue to just make a better product and bring that to you. So I feel like that's something else I learned. Is that it's made me better. It's forced me. So next thing, this is like the last point I kind of want to make is, where do I want this to go? Where do I want this to go? And I'll tell you where I want this to go. Sky's the limit. I just want to keep going. I want to bring you more interviews. I want to bring you more detail. And I want to continue to understand how different people are productive. I want to talk to comedians. I want to talk to actors. I want to talk to directors. I want to talk to producers. I want to talk to writers. I want to talk to authors. I want to talk to CEOs. I want to talk to as many people, athletes, you name it. I want to talk to politicians. I don't want this to be a political show. I don't want that. This isn't a political, this is about how the politician or how the comedian or how the person is able to make themselves, how they are productive, how they get up in the morning. What makes them get up and say, today I feel like doing something. A lot of us would like to just sit in, but having that mission, you want to move forward. Now, I want to continue to bring you the best interviews I can possibly bring you. I want to bring you the people that have inspired me and show and give them something that just give you something that. So even though we started with books, I want to bring you, influencers. I want to bring you, the meditators. I want to continue to bring you new content and new ideas so that we can continue to see it. Because I'm going to let you in on a secret here. The more empathy and understanding of different perspectives we have, the more it will unite us instead of divide us. Because there's something I'm seeing. It's not just in America, it's in the whole world. There's a divide that's happening. And it's up to us to bring it back together. And if I can do that through just using my voice the same way, now I know some people are going to, be upset about this, but the overall idea, now, if we go into specifics, yes, there are things that you could say about Lincoln but Gandhi, somebody who, was able to change a country without violence. That's what I see this as. If I can change the world through the voice, that's something we can all aim for. That's a great thing. So I want to continue bringing you different people. I'm going to talk to Democrats. I'm going to talk to Republicans. I'm going to talk to independents. I'm going to talk to the left wing, the right wing. I want to talk to as many people as possible. Film critics, people that hate movies, people that love movies. The more we can talk to these people, the more we can find the things that unite us. And together, we can only be stronger together. And I always sound like I'm on my soapbox here, but it's true. I want to heal the divide. And this is how we can heal it. By asking questions, by talking to different people and putting it out for the world for you to hear it. Some interviews are going to resonate more than others. That's okay. But just continue to put out that content. So I'm glad I'm able to, reflect on where it's come. Because if, first I was in a lull. In September, I didn't know what I was going to do. I went off and did the Kings Road podcast. And I was like, and it was going well. And then my partner kind of just, I don't know, we didn't see eye to eye on how the show was going, or he just didn't like professional wrestling anymore. So I was left in a lull there. So I had all these things, but I was just like, move forward. And that's what I did. I just continued to move forward. And here we are now. Now I've done all these interviews, and I'm going to bring you even more. And you know what? This inspires me. Doing this right now inspires me to bring you even more interviews. And people that I was scared to interview, I'm going to say, bring them on. Bring it on. I'll do my research. I do my research on that. I want to also tell you this. I listen to every single podcast before I put it out so that I can hear it and see if it sounds good. Because if the audio is bad or something like that, I'll give you a disclaimer saying that this is it, or if somebody cursed. I want this to be a family-friendly podcast. Now, the Kings Road podcast, there will be curses on there, but here we try to make it. I try to make this family-friendly. So I want this to be open to everybody. So that's something that's really important to me. Understanding how people's our perspective. As I would say, different perspectives. I don't like to use this word a lot, but I want to bring you diversity, not just in race. That seems to be the thing but in different people. I'm really inspired by Joe Rogan. Now, I know we don't have to agree with everything he has to say, but he brings on different people and he lets them talk. And that's what I want to do. I want people to be able to feel free to talk. I want this to just feel like it's a conversation, you and me talking. I had I was fortunate. I got a compliment this week from one of the last interview I did. He was listening with a longtime friend, and his friend said, "How long have you known this guy?" And he was like, about 20 minutes. And he said, "It sounds like you've been talking to him for 20 years. Like you've known him for 20 years." And it's like, that's what I want to bring. I mean, some people are not going to open up as much as others, but if I can bring you their flavor, their feel, that's what I get. So the more I do this, the more inspired I am to give you more interviews and to do more research. So that's kind of how I look at it. Looking back, I just want to continue bringing you more. I don't want this to just be books. I want this to be as many people as possible and to understand how they learn, how they're productive, and how you can take those things and do that. And with that, I don't know what else to say. I don't want to just sit here and ramble. I think I've explained to you how important this is to me, and this show inspires me to bring you more. And thank you for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you. As always, you can find me at Justin Yachts. The best way to find me is Instagram. I'm not going to lie. Facebook, I'll see it eventually, but That might be harder. But Facebook. I'm looking at trying to bring you a newsletter so they can do that. A website's kind of in the works. It's going to be more acting, but it's going to be tied into this. So a lot of new things coming up. Trying to get more interviews. Trying to break down those doors because a lot of these, it's not easy to get them. But if I can count the book thinkers thing, he told me, he said, there's always a third door. And that's what I'm doing. I'm finding the third door. And I might bring on the person who wrote the third door. I'd like to interview him. He'd be a cool guy to have on. So, as I said, thank you. And I will see you next time on the DMF.